we're more than just religious leaders. We're people leaders. We're spiritual leaders. We're there for holistic ministry, right? So if I got an atheist soldier over there, hey, don't believe in God, agnostic soldier, you know, that doesn't mean I can't show him or her love. That doesn't mean they're not part of the team.
Let's discover the heart of a chaplain, why they serve, and how they help our units. Watch me mow, but stay for a story.
Chaplain Daryl Davis. I'm from Tampa, Florida. I got 4 kids. I got a beautiful wife.
That's awesome.
I've served like 14 years altogether in the Army, 7 years active, 7 years reserve. So I guess if you want to say the mantra of my life is just like loving on people, and then learning from people. Like, I mean, even if I'm at a coffee shop, people watching, I'm learning. If I'm in a worship service preaching, I'm observing, I'm learning. And then in the unit, I mean, I learn from different people, no matter what rank or position that he or she may hold. I get a chance to learn and gain some understanding from them, whether it be their experience, their perspective, or even sometimes, scholastically, they may be educated as well. So, and I think that's why, I'm so, happy to be a chaplain, because my job gives me the opportunity to sit and just observe and learn from people. So,
What made you want to become a chaplain? So I know
okay.
that's your job, but like,
Yeah.
how did that happen?
So, I mean, long ago, I was just like anybody else, going to college, and pursuing that and living life, and then the Lord called me to preach. I was 22 years old. But prior to that, I'm talking about, like, so I'm a military brat, right? So you go back to my age of remembrance or recollection, 6, 7 years old. My dad's a combat medic. We're in Anniston, Alabama, or Fort McClellan used to be called, and then we go over to Germany, and 85 through 88. That's a long time ago. So, like, I'm so I'm a kid, and I'm seeing my dad, engage with all these different, people from different backgrounds. I'm getting to play with kids from different backgrounds, and going to company picnics and barbecue, and then playing volleyball. I see them playing basketball. We're shooting marbles, and just I enjoyed that so much. So I always said in my mind, I wanted to go into the Army. I wanted to be a soldier, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? And so when the Lord called me to preach, at the age of 22, then I'm like, man, I always wanted to go in the Army. So that's where that came from, and so, the process, of going to be a chaplain, I started that journey from there.
When you said the Lord called you to preach,
Mhm.
like, what does that mean?
All right, that's a good question. So there's a knowing. Some people feel like God talks to them audibly. Um, I'm one of those. And some people feel like God talks to them through dreams, through other people, through visions, and through the written word, right? And so, um, I was that wayward person, that person that fell off from where my dad and mom taught me, rebelled, and you know the Lord called me, audibly, like, in my own person, like speaking to me as if we're speaking now, not seeing him but hearing him, right? And a lot of people are like, that's not possible. Well, it is possible, and it
Mm.
did happen for me. And so that's why, I felt, you know inclined to take this walk, the way I'm taking it. And talk to anybody, like, I'm not better than anybody else. I'm not holier than thou, but I just have a call on my life. And so, um, I accept my call to preach, accept my call to be a minister, and then from there, and that happened in Tallahassee in April of 2020. So you're talking about 20 some years ago. The Lord called me to preach. So, um, has that been easy? No. Has it always been like, you know, I feel like I'm accepted? I feel like God is speaking to me all the time? No, there's seasons and times where I just don't even feel like I don't even hear from God. And so that's where the faith comes in, like just believing the original call and his original impression upon your life is still relevant today. And so yeah, that's where that comes.
Yeah, when I remember when I was a kid that my grandma, she was in the laundry room, I think,
Mm,
and I guess she was going through some stuff in her
right,
life, and she called upon God and Jesus, and I guess it came into her world, and it changed her forever from
right.
that moment forward. Where were you at that time?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was in Tallahassee, 627 Kissimmee Street. I remember the address, 627 Kissimmee Street, Tallahassee, Florida. Probably like a good stone's throw, of, a few hundred yards from Bragg Turner Football Stadium at Florida A&M University, FAMU. Now, I was a student there, and I was alone. Uh, I wasn't doing the right things in my life. You know, intoxicated. And or coming off of intoxication, not doing what I need to do in school. So and not thinking about preaching at all. Like, there's no way. My dad's a preacher. My granddad's a preacher, but I'm like, I do not want to be a preacher. I don't want to. I'm rebelling at this point. I want to do my own thing, right? Because what I had seen in people that are Christian or people even in my own family, a lot of hypocrisy, right? A lot of hypocrisy, a lot of failure, a lot of people saying one thing and doing the other. Seeing my mom and dad's marriage fail, right? My dad's a preacher. My mom's this woman in the church, and but their marriage failing, and that happened in my senior year in high school. So that put me into a tailspin of rebellion, and so that's where I was. I was 627 Kissimmee Street physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I was in a spiritual tailspin in a state of rebellion and very hurt person. So, when the Lord spoke to me, it was a shock for Him that to tell me or ask me to preach, because I was like, I'm I'm no good. Like, I'm gonna preach. Like, who's gonna listen to me, right? I'm not even doing good in school. I just go to school so I can get financial aid, so I can get money and do what I want to do. I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm a fraud. I'm a rebel, right? And so, but yet God still called me, and so that it kind of makes me want to say this to you, that's my why. All right, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're military. What's your why?" Or life. What's your why? My why is because God, gave me a second chance. So I'm very big on seeing the bright side of people, like even in their darkest situation, right? Yeah, I talked to people in some very dark situations, and I always have an optimistic view that they can make it out of their situation, or something positive or something righteous can come out of even the most, detrimental situation, or a person in the worst conditions. So
Yeah, I'm sure as a chaplain, you probably do hear
yeah,
a lot of craziness because you do have confidentiality, right?
yes.
So what does that mean compared to like a normal counselor or something like that?
So I'll tell you what it means. It's like a soldier, a family member, a person that's, you know, uh, working with the DOD or any other aspect, and them coming to me for counseling, and they say stuff that they said to somebody else, they'd be on trial,
Mm.
or they'd be kicked out of their house, or worse, right? They can say that to me, and between me and them, it stays, right? And the confidentiality that we hold as chaplains, and that I hold as chaplain, uh, the court of law can't make me divulge that information.
Mm.
It's like, hey, I know they came and talked to you, or you're their chaplain. What did they say about this, that, or the other? I can't, And when I do that, I lose my chaplaincy. Right? I lose my, capability and also qualification of being a chaplain in the Army.
Mm.
So that's how high the confidentiality is. The highest. Uh, is higher than the medical professionals, higher than behavioral health, is higher than military family life counselor. I mean, it's the highest level of confidentiality.
Yeah, I know as a leader in the army that I have had soldiers that has to come to me and told me some of their problems. Uh, there's a story of a soldier that I had, and I was in Korea, and this guy, him and his wife, Korea is typically a year rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're in 9 months
Mm-hmm.
or if you have your family there, 2 years. But he gets to us, I think, fresh out of AIT, and him and his wife were progressing along, and he was towards the end of his rotation, and they were expecting a child. And I remember him telling everybody how excited he was, and
Mm.
he was as he was like getting excited, they were buying stuff for the kid, setting up a nursery, all the different things. And then right before he went back home for the delivery of the baby, he gets a phone call from his wife and said, "Hey, the baby passed away,
Mm.
and you know, I cremated the baby and did all the things."
Mm.
And he went through whatever emotional things that he had to go through. Um, so I told the soldier, because he didn't know. I said, "Hey, we can get you, because we're overseas. We can get you a Red Cross message, and we can get you out of here for free."
Right.
And so he's like, "None of my family knows how to do it." I said, "I'll do it." So I called up I called up Red Cross, and basically they have to do a verification of the situation to make sure that it's good, and then go from there.
Right.
So I gave the name, I gave the information to the Red Cross, and they couldn't verify it. They
Mm.
couldn't verify. Lo and behold, that the spouse, the entire pregnancy, was lying the whole time,
Oh my.
all the way to the point where, like, not only was he expecting to have a kid, that he lost a kid, went through the grieving process, and then had to mentally bury his kid or cremate the kid,
Right.
uh, just to find out that his spouse was lying and taking that money and just going out and doing whatever she wanted to do.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to go back to is, like, he told me that story and I was involved in that story, and I felt some type of way, and it affected me, mentally, physically, whatever. I'm sure some of the stories that you hear from soldiers are different stories, but how does that affect your mental state?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, like they're going to impact you. The mistake that we make, and I will tell you, I had made previously in my career, is that, oh, I'm good, you know, because at some point, at certain points, you're prepared for it. You're kind of like, you go through training, you pray about it, and you just kind of like the duck, you let it roll off, but you're not a duck. And so after a while, you're like, before you know it, it starts impacting you. It starts impacting you at home, and that's where I started, noticing you start getting fatigue, like emotional fatigue, right? Because you're dealing with everybody else's stuff, and then you can become emotionally like numb. Like you've heard it so many times that the next person comes talk to you about it, you might not even really fully listen to them before you respond because you already heard before. So you're like, well, I'm gonna give you the prescription before you tell me all the symptoms. I'm gonna tell you what I think, or I'm gonna give you the advice even before you finish speaking. So I'm no longer engaging and actively listening to you. I'm ready to respond as soon as I hear certain keywords, right?
Hmm.
And so the same thing can happen when you come home, especially when you come home, because guess what? When we're in uniform, certain things I want to say and do, even when I get, I don't like certain decisions that are made. I mean, there's only so much I can say and do because we're in a militaristic environment. There's a rank structure. But when I come home, guess what? That doesn't exist, right? To a certain extent. So a lot of the disdain and basically emotional buildup might get unleashed here that shouldn't be unleashed
Right.
here. It's not meant for here, but this is your place where you may feel comfortable. So I always tell people it's good to have an outlet, chaplains, any type of caretaker, leaders. Um, it's good to have somebody to go to and talk to and just let all that stuff out even when you're doing good, it's good to go somewhere and process it. I was even just having a conversation with a soldier even today, just even today. He's AIT soldier, not gonna call no names, but I mean prototypically doing very well. But he was sent to my office because someone noticed that he needed someone to talk to. And when his presentation was, he didn't, if he'd talked to anybody else, and even in himself, he's doing fine. He's performing well, but he has some things that he's dealing with. But he's managing them. he's managing them very well. He's compartmentalizing things as far as like, hey, this is what I can and cannot do while I'm here. So his maturity level is high, but yet he doesn't have anybody to talk to about his situation. So, I reminded him today that he does have me, he does have chaplains that he can come to and talk to in a confidential space, and doesn't have to compromise his leadership, because if he talks to all his other classmates or battles, that his leadership can be compromised based on some of the things he might say or think. And so I, reminded him of that safe space. So same thing for us, same thing for me. We need that safe space where we can go and just say, hey, man, you know what? This happened, blah, blah, blah. And I'm handling it well, but I just want to, man, I can't stand this, blah, 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 blah. You need to have that space where you can kind of say those type of things so you get it off your chest. And it doesn't need to be at home, honestly.
Yeah.
This is not the right place. You need to be able to go somewhere else. And the chaplain, that's why we hang our hats on being that place where people can kind of just come and process stuff, dump stuff, empty their emotional baggage there. And so the same thing for me. I had to notice that for myself. So
Do you have to use other chaplains to dump your stuff? Do you guys do that like amongst each
so
other?
it depends. At the installation we're at now, like it depends on the size of installation, depends on the situation, right? Because a lot of times, if the installation is really small and chaplains all talk, and depending on the rank structure, you might not feel comfortable talking to other chaplains because they're too close. But if you're at like a Fort Liberty or Cavazos or Bliss, somewhere where a big containment where you got chaplains spread across, you probably find more people to talk to in person. Um, you also can find, being that we have the technology we have now. I mean, I got chaplains I talk to all the way in Korea and Germany, right? That I'm good with, and we just talk. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's not heavy; it's just somebody to talk to, right? Tell them about your day. Hey, man, I did this today. I heard this today, and they say, man, I heard this today. Or, I even have female chaplains that I talk to, and things of that nature. Chaplains of different religions that I may even be like, hey, what? Ramadan's coming up, man, and blah 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 blah, and they give me, I have rabbi Jewish chaplains that I talk to, so I just like talking to them because I learn from them, but also if I have something that I need to get off my chest, I've already built rapport with them,
Mm.
so I'm like, man, I gotta talk to you about something, and so it's like I don't have to worry. And then I have folks that have retired, like I got battle buddies that I've served with. I got a combat medic that I went direct with. He and I talk all the time, man. We talk about back in Iraq. And then I got a buddy that just retired, Command Sergeant Major. We grew up together. He's the reason I'm in the Army in a way, because he's a special forces guy. He's the one that like ran me to death to get me in shape to get in the Army. But because I was like way overweight.
Yeah.
But I call him and he calls me, and we talk, you know what I mean? And it's good to have that. A lot of people in that Army, we call it, golden triangle, right? You got to have that family and friends that you talk to outside of the formation, right? And so I think that's very important, and that's what I do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think without having any kind of structure in your life, especially a social structure, you can get yourself like in a really dark,
Right.
dark spot pretty quickly.
Yes.
Um, so what is the relationship? I know you were talking about like the rabbi and the Muslim, or yeah, the Muslim.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're
Imam.
called. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Imam. Yeah.
How is that relationship like? What does that relationship look like? Different religions getting together, is that a thing, or is that
It
it's
is.
just
The probably the best time, one of the best time, not the best time, but I would say one of the highest times I've had in the Army was my initial, what we call BOLIC, Basic Officer Leadership Course, but we call it CHBOLIC, which is Chaplain Basic Officer Leadership Course. Um, summer 2010, there I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and you had chaplain candidates and chaplains from all different walks of life, not just like, I'm talking about ethnically, nationalities, religions, ages, components,
that's awesome.
and everybody's together, and we're all there to be initially, indoctrinated into the Army, in one way or another. And it was real neat because we could actually have a safe space, which really we don't get that much here now. I miss that. We sit there and be collegial. We sit there and just share our faiths because a lot of times there's ignorance that prevails in like, hey, what's your faith and what's my faith?
Right.
Yeah, they opened the door. So for us to be able to share our faith was what was astounding. It's something that I think a lot of people should be able to do. Just sharing your faith, sharing your story is of great importance. And so we were able to do that, in that space. Um, Now I will be honest, a lot of chaplains like kind of veer off from that, especially as you go up in rank structure, because they're afraid to offend other chaplains of faith, other faith groups,
Mm.
and even some of the similar faith groups. They're like afraid to talk about the nuances of their faith, the controversies of their faith, the limitations of their faith when it may exclude people of different groups, and just having those conversations. I actually welcome it
Yeah.
because I think it's important for us to know where we're at, and but we're tasked as chaplains to be ecumenical and inclusive. And so, in other words, ecumenical means we're supposed to be providers for all people of all faith groups. Now, I may not be a practitioner of that particular faith. For instance, I'm not Muslim, neither am I even Catholic. However, if I have a soldier or a family member that is, I'm supposed to do one or two things for that soldier or that family member. That is, perform or provide. So I can either perform, if they're my particular faith group, or I can assist them and minister to them, or I provide. That means I got a brother or sister chaplain, or a clergy in the community, or a resource for them that will suffice them and minister to them, for that soldier, that family member, and
Oh,
that's what we're called to do.
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges, like just if I had a Muslim student or a Muslim soldier and I was a Catholic priest, or if I was a rabbi and I had a different faith come to me, like
Right.
what are the challenges of being a chaplain?
I think the only challenge is with us. It's not with the person, or the individual. They're coming to us with a need. So some of the challenges we may be the area of ministry. For instance, I will say even here at like the Tradoc or JBLE Fort Eustis area, because we only have one chapel, right? We only have a certain amount of chaplains. We don't have an imam. So the Muslim soldiers in our footprint really don't have a chaplain they can go to and talk to specifically about things of Islam or Muslim. We don't have a Buddhist chaplain. So if there's soldiers that come through that are Buddhist, we don't have a chaplain. Even so, let's say a lot of times we may not have a Catholic priest, and they may not be always available because the number of Catholic adherents can be a lot, right?
Mm.
And the number of sacraments that they need, can be a lot. So even at a big installation as Fort Cavazo, used to be Fort Hood, and Liberty, that used to be Bragg, right? You may have a Catholic priest there, but here, that Catholic priest is going to be busy, and so sometimes it's just constraints with, availability to be able to see all the adherents and things like that. So that's where we have to partner with clergy outside the gate, outside the post, and we have to make sure we vet those clergy to ensure that they're wholesome. They're not, abusing the soldier members or family members, leading them, or some dangerous sect of religion or extremist sect of religion. That's where the garrison chaplain comes in to make sure that person is well vetted before, or that entity is well vetted before we tell soldiers and their families or DoD civilians, hey, yeah, this is another good resource for you.
So that's some of the challenges.
Yeah,
What do you think is some of the positives about being a chaplain?
I think the positives is just allowing people to see that. So let me rephrase. So the army, so the chaplaincy is a corps in the army. So the model of the army is really a good microcosm of what our nation could be. And I'm wholehearted that. Now, I'm not saying the army's perfect. I'm not saying it's going, but I am saying it's a good model, right? And so the chaplain corps, from a religious and cultural perspective, and we talk about morality and ethics, is a good example of how we can dwell with one another, how we can respect one another and still be one.
Mm.
And and that's why you'll see, and you've seen me like try to, do like different things to bring culture together. A lot of people, I'm glad we're kind of talking about this because it really allows me to kind of flesh out, my why behind it, is so we can gain understanding of one another more. Because if you're gonna be a team, you gotta know your teammates. And so the Army gives you that opportunity to be up close and personal with one another, and they challenge us to know our soldiers. It's there. Know your soldier. Know your soldier, because the regulations and the mission and all stuff, that's something we have to all do. But what makes us be able to do the mission, in a more efficient way, is knowing each other. Because if I'm on a football team and all we know is the plays, and I don't get to know the wide receiver and the quarterback, just we just know each other on the field, where's the chemistry? It's not going to have chemistry. So we build chemistry. We build, that camaraderie, that esprit de corps, by getting to know one another. And I feel like chaplains have a lot to do with that. And I've seen it where we can house that opportunity for relationships to, flourish. And we're more than just religious leaders. We're people leaders. We're spiritual leaders. We're there for holistic ministry, right? So if I got an atheist soldier over there, hey, don't believe in God, agnostic soldier, you know, that doesn't mean I can't show him or her love. That doesn't mean they're not part of the team. We need to learn from them what it is that makes them, tick. What strengthens them? Where do they get resilience from? What are their philosophies and thoughts about life? Right? That's how we grow, and that's how we hang our hats as being like good chaplains. When you corner yourself, just say, I'm a Christian Baptist chaplain, and that's all I'm gonna do is just focus on my Christianity, me being a Baptist, and everybody fitting into my net. Then yeah, I'm gonna be a bad chaplain, and that's not gonna be a good experience. But when I can come out of what I want and really look at the needs of other people, um, and just being a big brotherhood, sisterhood, that's where we would get like really good ministry. That's where everybody's having fun. Everybody's getting after the mission, even if it's a sucky mission. We're still enjoying one another. That's what it's all about. So
Well, I think he wrapped it up right there. Honestly, that was a way to kind of end the interview. I really like. I think that last piece was super powerful,
yeah,
and it really makes you think about the chaplain corps as a whole a little
right,
differently.
right.
And I think that people that don't know what chaplains can provide may have a better understanding just by that little piece that you did. That last 2 minutes, you need to go out there and start preaching that right there. Be
Preach that
like,
right.
hey, listen up, everybody.
Come to the
So,
army,
yeah,
right?
no, that's pretty awesome. I
Yeah.
guess here's the last question I'll ask you
All right.
is what advice would you give the next generation, whether it's for soldiers, Americans, whatever? What piece of advice have you picked up throughout the years that you would provide to your kids?
Yeah. So soldiers, Americans, families, it's not what they did or what I did. It's what we did. And I think we've lost a lot of grounds. We lost a lot of opportunities to progress as a people, progress as an army, because we are individualizing our accolades, and we're also individualizing mistakes, right? And so if we're going to be this great army, if it's going to be this great nation, if we're going to be great families, we have to begin to, take it all in and say, guess what? It's not just they did it, we did it. And we have to figure out a way where when we lose, we lost. When we win, we won, right? And of course, we may have some people that have, contributed individually to give us those victories, and maybe unfortunately contributed to, break us to a deficit. But we have to start owning it and stop blaming one another when we fault, when we fail, and we got to start putting our arms around one another and building one another up. I don't know exactly how that's done.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy. Maybe not, but I do know we can't win by playing tug of war against one another. We got to pull on the same side. And so, because we got enough pulling against us, we got to get on the same side and pull one another. Whether you're weak or strong, we're all pulling together. And you know how it is when we do an org day, we do play tug of war. The other side
Yeah.
we pulling. You got to pull. So
Yeah.
you got to pull with your team. Um, and I believe if we do that and we collectively think about that, yes, my kids, my children's children, and everyone else's children will see that we'll make greater strides because I myself can't think of everything. It's impossible. I'm one mind.
Right.
But there's somebody else that may not look like me, may not even think exactly like me, but collectively our ideas are going to make for a better tomorrow. I'm just optimistic like that to believe it. Now the I guess the my theology and my eternal belief is that one day everything will be in the hands of the Lord to finality. But I believe God has left some things in our hands until he makes the final decision, for eternity. But while we're here waiting for that, we got to do what we need to do to help one another and love one another. And I don't care how you look, I don't care what you believe and all the other stuff. That's between you and your maker or your own mind. But I got to love you and I got to try to be a good neighbor. I got to be a good battle buddy if we're soldiers. I got to be a good husband and wife if we're family or if relative if we're family. And so we got to stop them and they and say we. Stop saying I. Let's say we. Let's do it together. So that's where I'm at.
It's awesome. All right, I think we'll wrap it up here. I appreciate everything. Honestly, it was a good conversation. I think as we kept progressing, it got better and better. So I do appreciate everything.
Awesome. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.